I'm still here. 100% I am leaving to go back east across Canada. 100% I am. But when you got a couple kids and a farm and a whole bunch of animals and a bunch of responsibilities at home, first you got to get a handful of things straightened out first, which I'm doing. And then to top it off, one of the kids got sick. She was sick for 3 or 4 days. Typical flu symptoms, no big deal. And then Sarah came down with your classic cold, full-on classic cold. And not too alarmed about it, but then the grocery store advertised they had a bunch of those rapid tests available. Now, mind you, we already had COVID. And then, so Sarah took one of the tests, and it said that she was positive. And then she gave her daughter the other test, and it said she was full-on negative. Go figure. So what I'm going to do tomorrow, maybe tonight, I'm going to go to the grocery store before I'll go, and I'm going to buy like 20, I think I'm going to buy 20 of those tests. They're on $20 each or something. And I'm going to test everything from orange juice to horse piss on the farm when I get home, and I'm going to see what all of the results are, and I'm going to share them with you, just out of curiosity. Anyway, I feel fine for myself, but yeah, I've been pretty busy around the place just trying to get everything, as many things done that I feel I need to get done before I just up and take off, because I might, who knows how long I'm going to be gone for. Obviously, once I get caught up in the fight, call it a fight, call it whatever you want. Once I get caught up and doing what's right, it's not going to be too easy to get me to go home, right? And then furthermore, I got some very informed, very informed, intelligent people coming over tonight, I think. And they have had COVID as well, and they're coming over tonight, and I want to talk with them, touch base with them before I leave. Have to. Got another friend of mine come over, my neighbor, professional logger. We dropped, I think, 20 trees on my property that needed to go, a bunch of rotten ones and stuff. So what I'm saying is I'm very busy trying to get things done before I take off. We got a couple different motorhome places lined up in Vancouver, British Columbia. We're going to grab a motorhome and we're going to head out. And I want to do my homework, my thorough homework the next couple days to make sure what I'm going to do is as effective as I can make it as I try to help make a difference. Meaning I want to go to the correct places, the correct times, talk to the right people, and I want to reach out to as many people as I can via this route and encourage as many people as I can to as well assist in doing the correct moves at the correct place, the correct time, and make a difference, right? Because a difference has to be made. And if any of you people out there are a little not quite well informed, this isn't about a needle. This is far from it being about receiving a needle. This is about much more. I don't need to get into that right now. But anyways, in the meantime, I just worked my ass off today. I just escaped the farm to come down on the river and get some important voices heard while I am still here, which is going to be maybe 2 or 3 more days before I take off and travel across my country to make a difference for what's right. So this is titled Translucent Humanoid / Predator, or bracket, Predator and bracket. Being an outdoorsman all my whole life, I feel I can relate to you all, and being a next door's neighbor here in Louisiana is that much better. First, I want to say that even sharing this is hard because it is so unsettling for me. This experience has left me shaking and has left me questioning a lot of my life. You really hit it on the head on how people are affected by these encounters. It has taken me some time to get over this, and I think I'm still not over it, but more like living with it, if that makes sense. Hits it on the head. My wife is the one who urged me to share these 2 stories with you all, telling me that it would make me feel better if I got it out. I think she has been right so far. I hope if anyone else had anything like this happen, please share them. People should realize that there is more stuff like that out there, and it is real. My story. I live in a little town in Grand Paris, Louisiana. It is a very small town, less than 500 people. Trust me when I say everyone knows each other. People know what you're having for dinner before you do. Please don't say the name of our town or our real names on the show. I really don't want this to get back to me. I've grown up hunting and fishing my whole life and spent countless hours in the Kisatchie National Forest. There's over 600,000 acres of public land and over 100 miles of hiking and biking trails. Everything a growing boy needs, and I guess Sasquatch can also use it. There are lakes, creeks, and plenty of wildlife. Fishing, duck hunting, and bow hunting is just what we boys do, and we love it. So I'm in my 30s. I never had anything strange happen in my life. No lights in the sky or seeing anything strange until last year. During bow season here, you can only hunt certain designated units. You can't bait deer here. You can't leave your stand up either. So in order to be successful, you have to put in some time scouting. We use a lot of portable stands and climbing sticks because they are lightweight and easy to move. We as bow hunters go as deep in the woods as we can away from the trails. So last summer, me and my cousin, he is my #1 hunting buddy and has been my whole life, started scouting trails. Now we're putting up game cameras and marking them with our GPS for all the good spots and places that we think will give us the edge for the upcoming season. It is August, so it's hot and muggy and pretty much miserable, but you have to do it. We pack in and camp around all this area and had no problems until that afternoon. We pick a camping spot, start setting up our stuff, and all is going great until my cousin asked if I heard that thing following us. I said, hell no, stop being silly. We were no kids anymore, and that didn't work as it used to be. He looks me dead in the eye and says, man, I'm not joking. I thought you were just ignoring it. So that is what I was trying to do, but it was getting close to me, backing off and closing in, back in again and backing off. I told him, I haven't heard a thing. Maybe it was just him hearing stuff, and that he was tired and we needed to get some rest and food, and then everything would be good. He agreed. So we started setting up camp and started dinner. The weird thing about hearing something weird like that is now every little noise you hear, you start thinking of stuff, and your mind starts making you crazy. All that evening, the fire would dance on the trunks of trees, and I think I saw something shimmer, or that I heard something walking around the camp. I mean, all damn night walking around the camp. So I slept with my pistol close, and the next morning we packed it all up, and we kept scouting. About lunchtime, we stopped and started having some freeze-dried backpacker food, where you just tapped out of the water. I was using my jet boil to get the water boiling. It's pretty loud for a pocket stove, so you have some leftover roaring noise in your ears when you turn it on. I shut it off, I poured it into our packets, and then we sat there about to dig in. That is when my life changed forever. My cousin jumped straight up and freezes standing there. I looked up from what I was eating, kind of startled, and I asked him, what the hell are you doing? He didn't, or rather couldn't reply. He just stared at the little clearing about 60 yards from us. I was starting to get that weird feeling that something wasn't right. After that night and all the noises I heard, I could feel all the warning bells going off in my body, like when you see a snake that you didn't know was there, except this feeling was just lingering. So I asked him a second time. He tells me in a shaky, whispering voice, I see the predator. Now at this point I should have laughed or something, but it never crossed my mind. I jumped up and looked with him. No joke, man, there it was. Not like in the movie, where you can see the alien thing, but like this man-shaped shimmer. It was about 10 or 12 foot up in a tree, and it was crouched down. You could clearly tell it was a guy's shape. I wheeled around and started throwing my lunch stuff in my pack while my cousin kept staring at it. I'm really glad he did, because when looking back, if had been alone, I think he meant if I had been alone, I would have just ran and left everything. The packing took me less than 60 seconds. I had my backpack on, was holding his backpack. I walked back over to where he was, and this thing was still crouched on a limb. So I started thinking, maybe it's nothing. Maybe we're freaking ourselves out, because it hadn't moved an inch. At that moment, it was like it was reading my thoughts. This thing stands up and drops down off the limb onto the ground. My effing heart stops. It was about 5 feet tall max, and it was man-made exact. When it hit the ground, you could hear it making a sound, like if any of us would jump out of a tree. It then stepped back, and against the tree it came out of for about 5 seconds, and then here it came. It moved towards us with fluid movement of an animal, and it covered about 10 yards in no time, and slipped behind some small brush and stopped. We grabbed each other and took off. We were a good ways off from where we had parked, and knew it would be a couple of hours hike because we like to make a big circle when we go at it. So there was no sprinting to make it to safety or anything. We just had to push as hard as we could to get back to the truck. We moved as fast and as direct as we could, making our way through the brush and the forest, but it wasn't near fast enough. Every time we stopped to try to catch our breath, there it was. It would never get closer than 50 feet to us. It was right there every single time we stopped moving. I'm now positive that was what we had heard in the day prior and all night. It would aside from us and parallel to us. But it seemed to move much easier than we could. We never heard it speak or breathing. We didn't hear it making any other sound than the sound of movement. We pushed on so hard, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. We eventually made it back to the truck, and this thing, the predator, whatever it was, had shadowed us for over 2 hours in constant movement. We threw his stuff in the back and hauled ass. We didn't speak at all on the way home. We were just exhausted. By now, I think we must have been in some type of a shock. I dropped my cousin off at his house, and I went home, and I sat on my porch looking at the trees and the other houses, making sure it wasn't there either. My wife knew something wasn't right. She started questioning me. After a few hours, I told her. I know this sounds kind of silly, just holding her and telling her made me feel better and helped me realize that it was over and I was home. I didn't go back out there for a while. If I hadn't let my trail cam out there, I wouldn't have gone back there all that year. And that's the end. And that's creepier than shit. And I don't envy that experience, man. That's a new email into you guys, all right? I'm starting at the top of the new ones in right now because it's just easy. And like I said, we've mentioned it before, there was actually a lady bow hunter who videotaped what you described in the trees across from her while she sat in her deer stand. And that videotape, I believe, is available on YouTube, I think. I don't know the title of it, you guys. Somebody out there listening is going to. That's creepier than shit. I don't know anybody who's seen anything like that myself directly. We've had a good handful of emails in from people who have experienced that. And if you are listening and you have had a real shitty experience like this one, and you want to share it, go ahead and share it. And there's obviously the right place to do it. You're not going to get judged. It's a safe place. And share what you know. Share what you know here. And maybe even if somebody's had a long interaction with something like that and knows more details and has a little more knowledge on what these men possibly saw, maybe email it in to us or share it in the comment section below for these guys to get a hold of you, especially if you live in the southern U.S. All right? And I believe that'll possibly help somebody. That's pretty creepy. It's funny that it just allowed, I mean, obviously you could have got a bead on it and let it have it too, right? If you felt so inclined. I don't know why something like that with such skills decides to toy with simple human beings, you know? And it's funny, the last video that I posted up, a woman spoke to us, I believe, about, you know, how these beings, how they escort us, scream at us, give us the mind speak and tell us don't come in here, I'm going to own your ass, threaten us. And a lot of people think it's simply because they have seen somebody's got some offspring in there, there's a kill in there, or something's going on in there. And I was thinking a little more about that, of a different angle to come at that. And believe me, where I guided for many years in the northern remote Rocky Mountains of British Columbia, as an example, why that confuses me. We are the only human beings in this particular massive area. We're the only ones. that enter that wilderness for maybe 3 months out of the year tops, and then we're gone, and that's it. And in those mountains is moose, caribou, mountain sheep, elk, lots of grizzly bears, lots of big frickin' attitude-filled mountain grizzly bears, eastern slopes of the Canadian Northern Rocky Mountains, shit piles of wolves, wolverine, coyotes. What else? Link. Link is, a lot of people call it lynx. They're actually called link. But anyway, what I'm saying is, we have all of that wildlife, and we're riding our horses down remote trails nonstop, and I call the main horse trail, the main game trail, I call it the public highway, because we use it, grizzly bears use it nonstop. I'll ride up a trail in the morning with my hunter trailing behind me, and see maybe older grizzly bear prints on the horse trail in the dirt and the mud below me, and at the end of it I'll come back and there might be a sow and 2 cubs went up the trail behind me, or a big huge boar on top of my horse prints. And we never seen them. We never seen them. And when we go past them on the game trail, or we're about to bump into them, they simply step off the trail, stay dead silent, and they let us ride by, and they go back on the trail and they keep cruising down. Wolves, same deal. There's a pack of wolves coming, they stay dead silent, they get off the trail, we go by them, they get on the trail and carry on their own way. Not one of those species screams or roars at us to not go into that patch of timber. Not one of them. Ever. And we never see them. You know, it's very difficult to get your eyes on a mature monster if you're intentionally trying to. It's not that easy of a thing to do, even in those remote areas. We do see grizzly bears fairly often, but it's tough to intentionally find them, and it's even tougher to intentionally get up on them. But I'm giving you guys an example of when you have a being, the forest people, whatever you want to call them, when they outclass us and those game animals so fiercely. They so outclass us. And so what I'm saying is, if I'm trying to picture the reason they scream at us or warn us not to go in there, it's simply because we're disturbing them on a kill, or we're disturbing somebody's giving birth, there's a young in there. I can't agree with that myself. I think there's something much more to it. Because the amount of grizzly bears, wolves, other game animals I have gone past in remote locations every single day for up to 100, 120 days straight at times. Not once have I ever had a grizzly bear roaring at me from a patch of woods or sticking its head out and telling me to get the hell out of there. Ever. They know better. They just avoid us, stay quiet, and leave. See what I'm getting at? So it's just tough one for me to accept the simple answer of, well, they just don't want you to go in that forest behind you because there's a young in there, or there's a kill in there, or they've had a little bit of a dwelling in there. Nope, I don't think so, because I know that they outclass us and those game animals. These forest people, beings, they outclass us so fiercely. They don't need to do that. It just doesn't make sense for them to do that for those simple reasons. There's something else. There's something else that we don't know yet, we don't understand yet, or else we just can't wrap our minds around. We can't even come up with a make-believe answer that's possibly acceptable for my brain anyway. It's confusing to me. It's just confusing to me. I've been in the woods with a pack of wolves around me. I've heard them. At times they'll come in, they'll split up, they'll be all around you. You'll hear the odd howl and bark. I've had wolves within 15 meters of me in thick brush. They make their presence known, but they leave. They just simply leave. Sometimes they do it just because I think they know they can. But they leave. They don't threaten me to make me leave. You know what I mean? They don't threaten me to push me off. They don't intentionally try to scare me to get me to go away. And grizzly bears don't do that either. There you go. Thought I'd tack that on to what I was possibly getting at in the last video I shared with you guys, and we tapped on that topic. There's a lot of things that don't make sense for what we think makes sense. Not yet anyway, but we're getting there. And let's listen to this one. This one's, thanks again for sending that in, man. Sorry I took off on a little rant about me for a minute there. But thanks again for sending that email in from Louisiana. And like your wife said, she urged you to email us through me. And I'm pretty certain I know the answer already. It probably did help to hear me share what you want to share with the world. I'll put money on it. It's making you feel a little better because you're not alone. And nobody is ever going to get ridiculed here. Nobody. Bullies get shredded to frickin' bits here. That's about it. People who experience screwed up things on the planet do not get ridiculed here, and this is one of the safest places on the planet for them to come out and be honest. There you go. Now, what do we got here? Footsteps in the Rain. That's the title of this one. Hi Steve, my name is Luke. Feel free to say my name. I'm a new viewer of the channel. I happened to stumble upon it while doing some research for a potential fictional story. I always found the idea of a race of people like Sasquatches in a fantasy prehistoric setting quite fascinating. However, this isn't what I'm writing you about. I actually have my own encounter that I honestly don't know what to make of. You see, I'm a person that doesn't believe in ghost stories or anything that comes off as pseudoscience. And my own perspective and my own religious beliefs, I just find that very hokey and kind of implausible. Before I lose your attention, I have to emphasize that I do not criticize those that have beliefs vastly different from mine. It's better to believe in something rather than nothing at all. With that said, I must get to the main story. Forgive me if it tends to be a little dramatic. I love writing stories, and that just tends to come out. But this story is something that I never really knew how to tell in a way that didn't make me seem crazy until now. My story begins about 9 years ago in February 2013. I was a sophomore in high school and lived in Tucson, Arizona. As far as cities go, it doesn't get any worse than that in my opinion. Around this time, I was also part of the Boy Scouts of America. I was currently working on getting the Scout rank of Life, which is just below the Holy Grail rank of Eagle. To get this, I was holding a high leadership position within my Scout troop. We all wanted to go on a backpacking trip and had been planning on it for a few months. Our destination was Mount Wrightston, which is just south of Tucson and large enough that the peaks are visible in the hazy blue distance. We all planned about 2 routes for 2 teams, Team A and Team B. Now I was leading Team B. Team A's route was to hike up to the saddle of the mountains, take a left, hike up to Wrightston's Peak and come up there. Team B's plan was to hike up the second saddle, camp there for the night. Just to make it clear, I was pretty chubby at the time, despite having weight training classes in high school that slowly burned the fat off my body like how holy water burns away sin. But our destination of camping in the saddle was fine by me. Now, this is both exciting and terrifying because this is my very first backpacking trip, and I was responsible for 3 other boys younger than me, even though I had 3 adults in my team. Now pay attention, as this is where some important details add to both the experience and confusion of the story. The 3 adults, whom I'll only refer to as James, David, and Conger, feel free to say these names, were the fun adult troop leaders. They liked to goof off and make jokes all the time, especially David and James. So I knew that my group was going to be fun. It'd be a great learning experience too, because James is Eagle Scout alumni. Well, we get to the gear. Now we get to the gear. Everyone else had gear for the trip. Well, I didn't. My family was never able to afford much, and I couldn't get the right backpacking gear I needed outside of the pack itself. Because of this, I ended up borrowing a tent and a couple other pieces of gear from one of the Scout Masters. The tent I ended up getting was fairly used, but still great condition, except for this one little thing. At some point in time, one of the tent rods broke or was cracking, and someone repaired it with duct tape. This meant that the sleeve of the tent canopy couldn't go down all the way, and left a portion of the mesh windows exposed in a single area of the tent. Keep this in mind, it is important for later. So now, February arrives, and we all meet up early in the morning and drive off to Madura Canyon, where Mount Wrightston sits in stone-cold silence. The area is beautiful and was very different from the desert rural city Frankenstein of a place Tucson actually is. It was cloudy around the mountain, which is an important detail for later, and the woods brought green to my forever beige and brown sun-soaked world. Makes you wonder if I'll start bitching about sand at some point. Anyways, we pull up to the trail entrance and park. All of us get our gear out, organize into our teams, and off we go. Of course, Team A went up first, and shortly after Team B followed in suit. The hike up to the saddle was very different from my other outdoors experiences, but at the same time, it was very adventurous. Along this trail, we obviously kept a good eye out, as it was both bear and mountain lion country. If anything, I was more afraid of the bears. The hours ticked by, and finally arrived at the saddle of the mountain. It was green and fresh and perfect. We took off to the right to a slope, so we weren't directly on the trail and we'd get in the way of other hikers. During this time, we set up our tents on the slope. Myself and the other 3 boys set up 2 tents, 2 in each tent, while David and Conger set up their tents a little bit above us on the slope, and James set up his at the base of the slope. Overall, every tent was within view of mine, and each tent sound was drowned out by the birds and gentle breeze that shook the pine trees. More time passes as we get our dinner made. Set up the bear bag a good distance away, and off to bed we go. I shared a tent with a scrawny young guy named Dylan. It's safe to assume that you can say all these names. I didn't want him sleeping on the side that had the mesh uncovered by the tent canopy, so I volunteered to make that my spot. As night crept in and the clouds began to reflect on the lights of the city, the forest took to a slightly illuminated state, dew. I think you know what I mean, as it is the light pollution that reflects off of storm clouds at night and illuminates the area just enough. Well, I start to fall asleep. Pit pat, pit pat. I open my eyes. It started to drizzle. It's cold outside. I'm at a real high elevation. My face is under the exposed part of the mesh and it starts to rain. Great. I choose this spot and I'll just have to deal with it. I close my eyes and I fall back to sleep. I woke up again, probably 30 minutes later. This is a very rough estimate. At this point in my life, my sleep issues started to arise, and falling asleep after being woken up is tough, especially after it rains and soaks your pillow and sleeping bag from the shoulders up. Oh my God, that sucks. I'm wet and cold and I start to go back to sleep, and then it started. I'm trying to fall asleep again, and somewhere from behind my tent, something is walking. It's very clearly sounded bipedal. Of course, my mind was thinking it was a deer or a friggin' bear. I basically was terrified and tried to make as little noise as I could. I breathed out slowly and quietly from my mouth, but this thing kept coming. It walked and walked as the pine needles and the occasional twig snapped underfoot, and it walked right past my tent, up the hill and beyond. I didn't look up or anything. I was too scared. As it was at this point, I noticed everything was really quiet, like too quiet, and it wasn't even drizzling anymore. It was so quiet, I could hear this thing walk over to the other side of the hill and out of range. In my fear, I pulled out my pocket knife, opened it, and hid it beside me just in case, and then tried to go to sleep. Pit pat, pit pat. I woke up again. The rain is back, and I'm thinking, oh great. My face is wetter and colder, and the water's running down and collecting at the end of my tent, of the tent my feet are at. Lovely. I curl up a bit and try to go to sleep. I must have been asleep for a little bit, but I woke up again and the rain was gone and the silence returned. I didn't think much of it, but then the steps come back. They came back from the direction they left earlier, and over the side of the slope and down towards my tent, and I was petrified. I wanted to get the hell out, but I froze. I didn't look up, and instead just looked at the wall of the tent and didn't face Dylan. Dylan, surprisingly, was passed out this whole time. He never woke up at all, but that didn't stop the steps. They kept coming back at the same path they took, which was right past the tent. These heavy bipedal steps, pine needles crunching wetly underfoot with a couple of twig snaps. They walked and walked and walked, and then stopped. They stopped just outside the tent, on the side my head and Dylan's head were. I was terrified. And I'm feeling that same feeling as I retell this. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I just stared at the wall. Then the most terrifyingly confusing thing happened. Something slid underneath the tent and under my pillow. Then it gently raised my head several inches off the ground. It was slow and gentle, and it held my pillowed head for several seconds. Holy shit. Let me tell you, those were the longest several seconds of my entire life, though my head felt something underneath the pillow like large fingers. Afterwards, my head was gently laid back on the ground. Like, how do you pick up an animal and put it down on the ground with such care? After that, the hand or whatever slid up from underneath the tent and then walked back behind it and away out of the audible view. I was scared but very perplexed. I tried to fall back asleep and succeeded. Morning came and we cooked breakfast. As we're cooking breakfast, I asked aloud everyone if they heard something last night. Everyone said they didn't hear anything except for James. James said he heard something walk through the campsite, but that was it. I decided to keep it to myself. After we ate, we packed up, and as I packed up my wet sleeping bag and pad, I discovered a granola bar wrapper under my sleeping pad. This is definitely an oh shit moment because I thought I grabbed all the trash. Turns out I didn't, and it further muddied what happened to me just mere hours ago. We hiked down to the trail entrance that morning. Lots of hikers of all walks of life passed us on their way up. It was a fun trip and one of my favorite memories from my scouting days. Well, we got to the entrance and hop in the cars and leave. We all head back to our original meeting location in Tucson. My dad picks me up. On a drive home, he asked me about it, and I decided to tell him everything, including the encounter during the night. My dad was quick to shoot me down. He said it was one of those adults in my crew, as I had the practical jokers, especially David and James. I chewed on that for a minute, and I told him it wasn't possible. James did say he heard something that night, but if it was them, I would have heard them walk to their tents as well as open and close them with the zipper. Yet my dad still said it was most likely them. Maybe. But it was doubtful, especially since the closest adult to my tent was James, and he was below me, not behind me. I stopped there and kept quiet the rest of the drive home. Ever since, I rarely told the story and was reluctant to tell it to my wife, fearing she would think me for some crazy guy. Well, she listened and was rather intrigued to say the least, and that was reassuring. Overall, I want to share this with you and with everyone. What I'm most interested in, Steve, is what you have to say. With all your years of outdoor experiences, have you ever had a situation where something lifted your head or a tent gently and placed it down, or just anything like that? I just know that whatever it was very heavy, and I didn't leave any prints or clear walkways aside from a few broken twigs. This has been on my mind for 9 years. I just want to have some help to find me an answer. Sasquatch or not, whatever it was very real. It'll be something I'll never forget. And as a message to all you viewers, Steve, thank you for all your stories and your own personal points of view. They actually encourage me to tell my own experience. And should I ever have another one, I'll come back and share. Experiences are just histories in the making, and legends forever immortal. And as for you, Steve, keep up the great work. I greatly appreciate your content and your own perspective on things. Also, Canada looks beautiful, and is somewhere I wished I could visit just once in my lifetime. Maybe even have my own little Jack London-style adventure. You really do bring that wilderness to life with the footage you shoot and on location discussions. I do have a request to hear more should have been dead stories you have from all your years as a guide. Those are just really cool and very different from what I get over here in the States. Thanks. Luke. Alright, Luke, thanks for your share, man. You know, one thing I always tell everybody when they email into us, and they always say they're not sure what it was and they're looking for answers, one thing I can almost confidence each time is, if you went out of your way to get on YouTube and you came across this channel, which isn't advertised as a Sasquatch channel like the majority of them out there, then you would listen to the content here, and then you would have been compelled to find the email address and type your story out and send it in. As far as I'm concerned, your instincts, your gut feeling is already correct on what you experienced, and that's why you did all those next steps, right? I think you possibly already know the answer to your question. Just feel a lot better if somebody could confirm it to you here, right? And have I ever had that experience? No, I haven't. Not myself. I don't know anybody who I've guided with or hunted with who has shared anything similar like that with me yet. Doesn't mean none of them have ever had that experience, but to have been physically had your head lifted off the ground, holy shit. And what I think from I gather, if I remember correctly, read it correctly, I think you're meaning they found a wrapper of yours and left it underneath your tent where your head was. That's something else. Because let's face it, if it was up to this forest, people were going to grab all the garbage that was left in the woods and take it back to the owners. They'd be pretty busy, right? They'd be pretty busy. But I do remember hearing of some hunters, I believe they harvested a deer. They harvested a deer and they left the hide and the head in the woods. And when they got home, woke up the next morning, the hide and the head were on their porch of their house. And it was miles away from where they harvested the buck. Interesting, right? Very, very interesting and unsettling. But, you know, when I am in the woods in a tent in the middle of frickin' nowhere, I'll fully admit it, some people might not agree with it, I don't care. I have a rifle in my tent with a round in the tube with the safety on. That's how I sleep. And I always have that barrel of my rifle pointing at my feet. And I shoot left, so it's always on my left side if I'm laying up. And I also position my tent away from whoever I'm with so that my rifle's pointing away that way and the other tent's this way or the other tent's there or there. And I always make sure that my partner, whoever I'm with, also knows that I have a loaded rifle in my tent in which way it's pointed during the night, in case they get up to go pee and possibly might make a noise, whatever. Or if shit goes down, they know where I am and where not to shoot. I know where not to shoot through the tent if something's possibly sticking a claw through the wall, you know what I mean? Just, it's a 1 in a million, but it happens. I know of a couple guys here in British Columbia who were both in the same tent and had to fend off a sow, grizzly bear, and her cub as they were pouncing all over the tent, biting the shit out of them through the tent wall. And that's another thing too. I do not share a tent with anybody, ever. I don't share a tent. One of the main reasons I never have shared a tent is because when I'm hunting with you, say I'm guiding you, I'm with you from first light to last light every single day for upwards of 2 weeks. I don't need to sleep next to you as well. I just don't. I don't need you in my tent burping and farting through the night or snoring at the end of my workday, right? So that's one of my main reasons. But on another note, when I've had some guys complain, well, we're not going to sleep in the same tent. I'm like, no. I go, what do you think we're going to do if we're both in the same tent? And all of a sudden there's a grizzly bear jumping up and down in the tent. What are we going to do? Right? So if or when possibly that 1 in a million scenario goes down where a grizzly bear is jumping down on top of you in your tent, well, hopefully the noise you make from getting bit, your partner in the other tent is going to very effectively get out of their tent with their gun and their flashlight and dispatch the bear before it pops your head like a pimple, right? So that's another reason why I don't share a tent. What have I had? I have come out of my tent to see bears before. I've seen grizzly bears from my tent. I've seen everything from my tent. I've heard one time, middle of frickin' nowhere, dropped off in a float plane in northwestern British Columbia, well, north central to northwestern British Columbia, in the middle of frickin' nowhere. And I had a buddy of mine, and he's got his own tent, as usual, the guy I'm guiding. And I was about 10 yards from the edge of this small lake. It's just big enough to get a super cub on floats to land in it. And you could hear a mouse fart from 20 yards. It was so quiet. And then all of a sudden, so you got the lake, the shoreline, the game trail, parallel in the lake, and then us in the bushes on the ground in the forest about, maybe 10 meters. 10 meters from the edge of that next game trail. And there's no way out of it. Because normally I try to position my tent so it's downhill of a main game trail, because cool air drops, so your thermal air currents heat up, cool down. So all day long the wind's going up, all night long the wind's going down. So your nighttime predators, grizzly bears, big mature male grizzly bears are predominantly nocturnal, not always, but mostly. They're going to be going up and down that game trail during the night. So what I try to do is I try to keep my count below the game trails so that they go by and I go undetected and they don't stop and they just carry on through. This particular spot, obviously, because you got lake, game trail, it's impossible to sleep and set up camp below the game trail, so I had to set up above. I guess I'm babbling a little bit long for this not so exciting story, sorry, but anyway, but it was really a cool experience because you could hear kabloosh, 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 getting louder and louder and louder as a moose was walking along the lake in the water, but within very close to the edge, walking along the water, so his feet were coming up out of the water and clopping down, kabloosh, kabloosh, and it was so loud. It just made you go like this in your tent because it was so loud. And I'm like, uh-oh, it's only a matter of time until the moose smells us, right? Because our air is always sinking during the night. Even if it doesn't have to be windy. That cool air is still dropping. So I knew that we would have our scent particles would have been pooling up downhill of our tent and across the game trail, probably right to the water, right? And sure enough, this thing, it sounded like, well, that moose would have been like here to that rock behind me for me in the tent. My buddy was a little farther away. And all of a sudden, it sounded like what a moose would sound like, doing absolute panic shit itself because it would have got punched in the face with that big pile of raw, fresh human predator scent. Just would have punched it right in the face, oh my god, and sent it into absolute panic, and it just went running across the lake farther into deeper water, and the noise from that moose running through that water was something else. And to top it off, because the mountains all around, the timbered mountains around the lake were steep, so that sound was just reverberating off the walls of the mountains. I'll never forget that. It was intimidating in a way, but not really, because you knew exactly what it was. But that being said, could you imagine if it was the exact same scenario I described to you, and something walked up to my tent and then slid their hand underneath where my head was? Now that wouldn't be too cool, would it? Picture that one. That would be real shitty. But before something would have managed to get their hand underneath the tent, I'll admit it flat out, 180 grain, 300 short magnum or 300 ultra mag round would have already gone through the tent wall into the center mass or whatever that was breathing on my tent, about to reach under and touch me. Yeah, I would be doing that for sure. It's the preservation of life. I don't know what's on the other side of that tent. It's definitely not going to be a prey animal, not a chance. You know how the prey animals react. And it's definitely not going to be my partner, because we already are under strict rules of never, ever playing a prank on your partner when you're in remote anywhere and you have firearms. You just don't do that. That's about as smart as putting on a black furry suit and running around the woods during bear season, right? But anyway, I'm babbling quite a bit today, aren't I? Bears are going to be out here fairly soon if this warm weather keeps it. Well, it's not that warm at nighttime. It's pretty cool. Anyway, let me get another one out. All right. This is very short. I don't know what it's about. The market is red, and the title's Bigfoot. I'm a Desert Storm veteran. I've been in the woods since a young boy. I've only got one Bigfoot experience, but I have a lot of UFO experiences. But anyway, I was coming out of Biloxi, heading towards North Alabama, which is where I'm from. It was pouring down rain. I was passing over a couple of bridges on I-59, and that's when I saw it. All I got to see in a couple seconds was the head of a Bigfoot in between the media, between a couple of bridges. Wow. I couldn't turn around. I just kept trucking. At 70, I realized there is more than we know out there. Thanks, Steve. That's it, short to the point. Wilson, appreciate it, man. You're correct. There is a lot more than we know out there and going on today. And that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about all this shit, right? How about this one? Mark this as red. January of 2022, a young one. On my way home from work on January 8th, 2022. Just as it got light out, I spotted something. There's a camp that sits back away from the road, maybe 100 yards or so, has a big yard. Up to the road on the one side is a spring-fed pond. Behind the pond is some small saplings, then a clear cut as wide as a truck going uphill. I seen something in the lower part of that clear cut, sitting angled away from me. I look there every time I drive by looking for deer or whatever else might be wandering through. So I knew it wasn't a stump or log roads. So I knew it wasn't a stump or log roads were crap, so it took a bit to stop. I backed up, and when I was almost to where I could see the clear spot, it stood up on two legs like we do. I could see it stand through the saplings. When I went the last 10 feet or so to stop, it came down the hill. When it reached the bottom, it stopped and looked at me. It was black from head to toe. Light wasn't good enough to see any features. It was small, so it had to be a young one. As I was looking at it, the words, it's just a kid, popped into my head. Then I looked at opposite side of the road, then I looked at opposite side of road, then drove away. As I drove away, it turned to walk back into the woods. It was about 4 or 5 miles before my train of thought was back, and I realized what I had just seen. Even if it would have been a kid, I would have just drove away. I would have looked to see if other kids were there and looked to see what they were doing. I don't think it was alone. I should have turned around and went back to look for tracks, but I was tired from working 12 hours, so I wanted to get to bed. I planned on stopping and looking when I went back to work, but we ended up getting rain that night, so that got rid of most of the snow we had. I find it odd that I didn't go back. It would have only taken 10 or 15 minutes to go look, but I didn't. Also, I could have went when I got up, and for some reason I didn't. I want to know, did what told me it was a kid keep me away from here? Okay, that's a typo, you guys. What does he mean? I want to know what it told me. If it was a kid keeping me away from there because it knew the rain would get rid of the tracks? Has anyone else had anything like that happen? Kept away from a spot for some reason. My name is Rick Waldeck, and I don't care if you say my name. I know what I saw, and if anyone don't like that, they can kiss my ass. Love watching your videos, been doing so for close to 2 years. I also crave knowledge and want to learn all I can before I'm gone. Keep up the good work and keep spreading the truth. Almost forgot this happened in north central Pennsylvania. Almost forgot this happened in north central Pennsylvania. Take care and be safe. Okay, Rick, thanks for that, man. Lots happens in Pennsylvania. And I think what you meant at the end was, has anybody else had that happen? Meaning, has anything somehow kept you away and not going back to a spot by giving you possibly a message in your head or feeling, right? Pretty sure that's what you meant. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to shake their head and go, yeah, for sure. Let's keep going. I might do a share from the shop later on too. Mark this as red. These are all recently mailed in, you guys, all right? I just decided to start at the top of the pile for change. More from the Spooky Woods is the title. Steve, back at you one more time. Again, thank you for your excellent service and support you provide for the people. My background: 75 years young, retired U.S. Army colonel. Started out as a private. Not bad for an old draftee. 2 tours in South Vietnam, one of which was cut short by a Viet Cong hand grenade, and a total of 26 years spent hither and yon. After leaving the service, I taught high school for 8 years, and another 5 years as a personal chef and caretaker for a local family. I've always been an avid hunter for deer, upland game birds, squirrels, rabbits, wild turkeys, but nothing that might eat me. I love to fish and consider myself an outdoors type with passion for sharing with the younger generations. Currently, I live outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and act as a volunteer game warden and hunter safety instructor at the Joint Base Charleston's Naval Weapons Station. Too old to stand in a bass boat for 8 hours a day anymore. So I've been regulated sitting on the many docks and piers surrounding the Charleston Harbor, or fishing from a kayak with an electric trolling motor. I apologize for this lengthy post, but it sets the stage and could possibly help someone to manage their experiences. Back in the mid-70s, my younger brother built a home on the family farm, roughly 20 to 30 yards from the spooky woods I've mentioned in an earlier post. There is a one-lane passage winding through the thick hardwoods and pines to a pond about a mile away, built by our grandfather back in the 50s. The pond is fed by a spring at that spot. Over the years, we figured it was a Catawba, C-A-T-A-W-B, Indian camping area. We have found numerous arrowheads, napping chips, pottery shards, and stone implements in the area. In addition, there are a number of mounds that we assume were grave sites. Out of respect for the indigenous, we have never disturbed any of these areas, hence the experiences belong to our family. We have what could be considered a medium-sized family: brothers, sisters, sons and daughters, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, etc. My brother's home has always been a gathering place for various family events over the years. We managed to always gravitate to the back patio and deck after the sun goes down, and, weather permitting, many large times have occurred. During the fall and winter, when the leaves have turned and fallen, you're able to see several hundred yards down a slope to where the dirt road turns to the pond. On several occasions, we have noticed softball-sized orbs of white light moving through the woods from the pond area. There are no houses or farms for a number of miles in that direction, and there is a sloping hill behind the road that would block any light reflections. The lights are visible for several minutes before disappearing, and no one will even consider venturing down the road to investigate the source. I reckon someone could be attracted to all of our activity and just wanted to see what's going. I reckon someone could be attracted to all our activity and just want to see what's going on. My name is Steve Richards. You may use my name if you wish. Spring is coming and turkey season is fast approaching, and I continue to watch your six. I absolutely appreciate that. Thank you very much, Steve, for that email. And the white lights. The damned white lights of orbs. I haven't seen them in the timber myself yet, close to me, but I videotaped two lights way the hell up in the coastal mountains of British Columbia, steeper than frickin' hell, and it was minus, I don't know what it was, minus 10 or 15 where I was down the valley bottom. I don't know how cold it was up there. And I videotaped those lights. I believe I found that clip when I was editing a week ago, and I put that clip at the front of a video for the hell of it, just to repost it. And it was a bright light, man. That was one hell of a bright light. But then there was two lights. And then the one light went out, disappeared in the trees, whatever it did. There's a small pocket of spruce right there. And then that brighter light disappeared. I haven't a clue what the lights are myself. I do know 110% that what people call orbs, glowing balls of light, have been accompanied with Sasquatch sightings literally, possibly thousands of times now. So, there you have it. Thousands of times. I do not have a definitive 100% personal answer with solid knowledge to what they are. I haven't a frickin' clue. All I know is it is fact. They are seen, they're real, and they're associated more commonly than not with sightings of these forest people. Go figure. Would I go running down there to investigate it myself if I saw a glowing light in the timber? I don't know. I'd go with my gut instincts. If it made every hair on my body stand on end and I was on absolute alarm and feeling threatened, hell no, I'm not going down there. If my gut instincts told me it was cool and it was safe and I felt very curious, I'd probably go ripping down there possibly. Would I bring a weapon? Yep. Yeah, I would. Why? Because I can't run that fast and I don't have fangs and claws, and human beings are undergunned in out here. We just are. We're undergunned, except we have brains and thumbs. And there's a lot of us, right? That's our advantage. What else do we got? I'm going to keep ripping another one. All right, Recent sighting similar to predator. Can I just read this? It's a different one. All right, here we go. Recent sighting similar to predator. Wow, that's two in one sitting. Steve, I very much enjoy your channel. It's usually the first thing I check in the morning even before I make my coffee. Never thought I'd personally have a share for you, but never say never. This sighting just occurred on Friday, October 8th, 2021. Oh, I wonder where I found this from. Oh, I probably found, this is an older email I probably found in my inbox. Sorry it took this long, but it's not one of the only ones. Let me start that sentence again. This sighting just occurred on Friday, October 8, 2021, 5:20 p.m. in central Maine. It's rural here, farmland and forest with one little store at the center of town. The store is roughly the size of the average living room, but whatever you need, I'll bet $5 they have it in there. The sun was low in the sky, but still bright, not setting yet. It's that time of day that photographers love. Colors pop while simultaneously long shadows can also be cast by anything in the path of light from the sun. I had just driven over a bridge that crosses a good-sized stream and was approaching an intersection where three roads converge. At that intersection, the road that I was on, Road 1, veers to the right towards the 2 o'clock position. At the 11:45 position is another road, Road 2, and at the 9 o'clock position is the road I was going to turn onto, Road 3. As I approached the intersection, something dark at the right side of Road 2 caught my eye. It's about the size of a person and backlit by the sun, so that I could not tell anything more than its form, no features. I focused my attention upon it, believing it to be a person about to cross the road, either to fish the stream or cross the bridge to the store. I slowed down to almost a full stop to give them time to cross the road, knowing that any driver behind me, especially with the sun in their eyes, would not be able to see the pedestrian as my vehicle was blocking their line of sight, and the moment I make my left-hand turn, anyone behind me that continues on the main road would have no idea someone was crossing there. A half second later, a second after I first noticed it, the pedestrian disappeared. It's completely gone. There's nothing there but grass. Another half second after that, it reappeared 8 feet to the right of where I'd first seen it. This time, not only was it again backlit by the sun, but it had moved in front of the beam of my headlights, which had accidentally been left in high beam. My headlights retracted off of it. This repeated about 6 more times while I sat there, and it made its way across the road towards the stream. I can only describe what I saw by referencing the way the being was depicted in the movie Predator. It was as if an image of the landscape behind it was being displayed upon it, causing me to see a distortion with a halo effect around the perimeter of its form. Each time it reappeared within the beam of my headlights, I saw a glinting of sorts where the upper legs, torso, and head should have been. This effect was given more pronounced around the edges of its form. Nothing reflected from where the lower legs should have been. It also wasn't backlit there due to the grass and where the shadows of the trees hit once it moved past the grass and into the road. My lights were clearly hitting something, but not a person. As far as size, it appeared to me to have the build of a roughly 6-foot-tall human male. There are no signs or poles where it was at that intersection to have reference its height against, so I would not lock myself into that specific height. Could it have been taller? Sure, but not outlandishly so. I've lived in this little town for 25 years and have never seen anything like this before. My ex claimed about 15 years ago to have seen a Sasquatch in the woods on our land. This story is the only one I've ever heard where the being was wearing a t-shirt. I've been listening to your channel in hopes of hearing someone else with a similar story as his, Sasquatch wearing clothing. If anyone out there has seen such a thing, I'd very much appreciate the share. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy life as often as you do to read all the stories that are sent to you. I very much appreciate you and all your viewers who take the time to put it all down in black and white and get it all out there. Okay. There you go. There's another one. Another one with the description of the Predator thing from the movie Predator. And where'd they get the idea? You gotta wonder that too, right? Where'd they get the idea to do that? Wouldn't that be great to talk to the person who originally wrote the script of Predator and ask them where they came up with the idea to come up with that shimmering being in the trees and jumping on the ground? Where'd they come up with that one? Wouldn't that be interesting? Anyway, getting back to you. Okay, thanks for sharing that. And coincidentally, we have a sighting of the exact same thing you've seen in this same video. Go figure. What are the chances, right? But again, it's endless. Now, on to your question. If anybody has seen one of these forest people, Sasquatch, Sabe people, whatever you want to call them, if you've seen them wearing clothing, well, go ahead and pass it on to Kay in the comment section below this video. It'll be the easiest, fastest way for her to get the answer. Or him. Did I screw up there? K. It's just the letter K was at the end of the video. Oh, no, it's a woman. Ex-husband. Sorry. Sorry, Kay. Sorry, man. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to get back up to the house. I got a fire going out back with all the branches from about 10 trees that dropped in the horse pasture. Make sure that's not burning anything down. And see how my sick girls are making out. And then make a couple more emails. I received a few emails of people from Ottawa offering up a place to stay. Absolutely appreciate that. Who knows? We might take you up on it, or even a parking spot for the motorhome or a place to shower. I'll definitely be saving those emails. All right. If I haven't answered you back on the emails, just I just haven't had time yet. Now, time to go home and get myself more informed what's going on in my country today as this struggle for truth and freedom goes on. The evidence is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling at how we've all been misled. Mind-boggling. It's a very frustrating time of life today for people who want to fight for freedom, people who want to stand up to tyranny, and people who want to fight for the truth. It's a very frustrating time. Not so frustrating for the people that just want to fall in line. Not very frustrating for them, unfortunately. But more and more people are coming out. Mainstream media needs to be held accountable for a lot. How they've had a negative impact on all of us, all of our communities, society as a whole. So many crimes committed in our faces non-stop. But hopefully this effort put forward by the world is going to clean it up. Let's hope so, right? Because it is time. It's time to clean it up. It's time to get all the honest truth and knowledge out there for every single one of us. We're all equal. All of us are equal. Unfortunately, we got to fight for that equality, right? I'm down. I'm game. I'm into fighting. I'm gonna go fight. And I'll be back shortly. And I'm gonna possibly make a few pre-recorded shares to load up to the channel that will play before I go. And I am going to videotape every single thing I can as I travel across this country and take part in standing up for what's right. And I hope all you do the same. For as many of you out there that can, do the same. It's time to stand up now. This is the time. No matter what country you're in, its time is now. It's right now. Might be the last chance you get. I'll be back shortly. Well, that's one of those sights you just have to stop and try to record to share with everybody when you see them, right? First light in the morning, a remote lake, a bit of a breeze, fog and mist and reflection, dead silence.